Nuclear missiles threaten nuclear World War III. It is recommended that you pause and read the similarities of the situations at the end of 2012 and 50 years ago. In this video, you'll find how the codes document the events then as they are documented in our historical literature. This video is a continuation of previous videos seen on this channel to demonstrate how unusual the year starting at the end of 2012 will be. Let us now look at the Cuban Missiles Crisis. This video will refer many times to the Wikipedia story. It is taken from the Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. In August 1962, the Cuban and Soviet governments secretly began to build bases in Cuba for a number of medium-range and intermediate-range ballistic nuclear missiles threatening the US. The codes tell us that the master of the universe that put light on my missiles had mercy on all the evil. We just seen the verb to illuminate or throw the light on in this term. Instead, we can also use the verb cursed in this term. Cursed and attack will be another term in this matrix. The codes are telling us that the master of the universe that cursed my missiles had mercy on all the evil. We know that the Cuban Missiles Crisis started in October 1962. Just above the missiles term, we find the year 1962 in the codes. Of all the options that the United States had, it chose a blockade. With one term, the codes are giving us two pieces of information. They were blockaded, and they blockaded them. The Cubans were blockaded, and the Americans have done the blocking. Note that the terms blockade intersects the terms year 1962 and my missiles. Another meaning to the blockade term is that the master of the universe, with his pity, blockaded the sea. The nuclear portion of the ballistic nuclear missiles was the big concern. Interwoven in the missiles term, we find the word "and nuclear." The reason for the pity in all the evil were the nuclear missiles. As we can see, both terms complement one another by sharing the letter Aleph. And atomic has another fascinating meaning. Previously, we saw the blockade term. And atomic can be read as and blockaded or sealed. The pronunciation of both words is different, however, the letters are the same. So here we see in such a small matrix two different ways of saying the same thing. Not only the word blockade is in common to both terms, but also the addition "and" is preceding both terms. Emphasizing the interrelation between the two terms, the matrix shows us that they both share the same letter Vav. After much fear, the confrontation ended on October 28, 1962. And the codes tell us, and the affliction was removed from them. The affliction of confrontation ended in 1962, and note the connection of the two terms by sharing the letter Gimel. 1962 is the focus of this video. The Cuban Missile Crisis is one of the big stories of the year. In a future video, a connection will be made to 50 years later, year 2012-2013. The Cuban Missile Crisis almost precipitated a nuclear World War III. 50 years later will also be a critical year. You may pause for more information. The master of the universe is the one that cast a missile, is still a major part of the extended matrix. We see now the term and a rocket. A missile and the rocket terms now give us the message: the master of the universe is the one that showed a missile and a rocket. The matrix is now introducing the major player, the island of Cuba. The Cuban Missile Crisis began by ships carrying cargo to Cuba and the US enforcing a blockade on the Cuban island. The matrix is emphasizing this point by showing that Cuba is an island. The second major player is the United States, and they appear here twice. And of course, we have here the key term stating that the year was 1962. In the matrix, we find one of the most important dates in 1962, the 30th day in the Hebrew month of Tishrei. On this date, 28th of October 1962, the end of the crisis has arrived. Here is a quick look at some of the key terms seen in this matrix. In October 28, 1962, it was agreed that Cuba would not pose a missile threat to the United States. Only a few weeks before, it seemed that the US would attack Cuba to destroy the missiles and their bases. Instead, the missile concept was cursed and forgotten for many years. But the plague is seen all over the matrix, and it could have erupted into a nuclear World War III. Thanks to the master of the universe, the missiles did not reach their target. You may pause for another quick review. The matrix is now somewhat bigger, but still centering around year 1962, the same term we've seen before. Earlier in the matrix, we had the term stating that the master of the universe shed a light on the missiles so we could see them. However, man's eye in the sky was a camera from an American airplane. The codes tell us that in 1962, he set up an airplane and raised the alarm. Using another Hebrew word for a plane, we have the second term that says he established from an airplane. In red, we can see the two different ways of saying in Hebrew airplane. In September 1962, the suspicious Soviet ship Kasimov was photographed from a USA plane. In the matrix we see, and my ships and I beat. Bad. We've seen the two airplanes in the matrix, and we know that one was used to gather evidence on the sea and one on Cuban soil. The photographic missions were the key for the US discoveries. And the codes are telling us, from a photograph, one picture is worth 1,000 words. Two airplanes, each providing a photograph. In Hebrew, the airplanes are spelled differently, two different photographing missions, and two different ways of saying an airplane in Hebrew. We've already seen this term before in another place. This time, the matrix elaborates and says, and they blockaded 7 days. We do not know the exact number of days of the blockade. However, the official dates of the beginning and the end of the crisis amount to only a few days. But 7 days can be read in Hebrew also as 7 seas, thus giving us, and they blockaded 7 seas. 7 seas had different meanings over the years. However, they always referred to the major routes of ship transportation. The matrix, however, is making the point that the island of Cuba was blockaded for several days from several different approaches. You may pause for a quick review. The matrix revealed when the crisis ended. When did it start? The Avalon project refers to October 19, 1962. Right from the heart of 1962, we see in blue the date 19th of October. And to emphasize the connection, the two terms share the letters Chaf. This is the date that soon after the world became aware of the Cuban Missile Crisis. We now see in the matrix the two dates, the 19th and the 28th of October 1962, the beginning and the end dates of the Cuban Missiles Crisis. To enforce the blockade, the USA used many of its ships and airplanes, but also from other countries. The codes concur with historians and they say its blockade is voluminous. Note that this is the third way in Hebrew of saying a blockade. We see here a remarkable interaction between the two date terms and the blockade term. The start of the blockade, and here, by the virtue of sharing the letter Yud of both terms with the interaction between and they blockaded 7 days, another blockade term, and the date of the end of the blockade. It was John F. Kennedy who opposed attacking Cuba and Russia. It was his decision to use the blockade option. Here the codes clearly show that someone cursed an attack. A quick review before we examine who cursed the attack. Historians are likely to give John F. Kennedy the credit for not attacking Cuba. The codes present John F. as in John F. Kennedy very prominently in this matrix. And John F. Kennedy is a rock. Note the red circle indicating the continuation between the two terms where the last term of the first term touches the first letter of the second term. As a result of the Cuban Missile Crisis, John F. Kennedy was perceived to be a stronger person, but Fidel Castro's power weakened. We see clearly the new term that states that Fidel's power weakened. From 19th of October 1962, John F. Kennedy was strong like a rock. He opposed an attack and implemented a blockade. A huge blockade. The crisis ended on the 28th of October, with Fidel Castro being weakened by losing much of his firepower, prestige, and value to Russia. Only after the night's darkest hour does the sun begin to shine. After the threat of the most devastating world war did the real move to peace begin. Indeed, peace is very prominent in the matrix with several significant terms. We can see in this matrix three prominent peace terms. I shall absorb peace. In her there is a side of peace. In other words, in the year 1962, there was also an aspect of peace. The term can also be interpreted as, with her, he captured peace. In other words, the darkest hours of 1962 started to capture the peace to come later on. And the third peace term is peace movement, or we can call it moving toward peace. A quick review of the statistics of the peace terms and the translation of all the peace terms in this matrix. We have seen in the matrix, I shall absorb peace. With it, he captured peace, or in it, there is an aspect of peace. A peace movement. And there are other peace terms in the matrix. Where to until there is peace? And peace implemented the Master of the Universe. We must thank the Master of the Universe for his guidance. For there is a hint in this matrix that JFK was guided by the Master of the Universe. We saw earlier in the matrix the term in John F. a rock. From Deuteronomy, we can see the connection of the term rock to the Master of the Universe. In particular, note the Master of the Universe's attributes as a rock. John F. Kennedy is described as a rock, while the Master of the Universe is described as the rock with a capital R. John F.'s work was close to perfect. His ways were close to justice. And John F. was right. We must thank the Master of the Universe for guiding John F. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Do you have any doubts that we must thank the Master of the Universe for his guidance? For his blessing? Wait for the 19-letter blue term. Let's start with the first of the four codes in this matrix. At the end of the crisis, the war ends and then the blessing begins. Note that at the end of the crisis term, we find also the end of the war term. Both terms end at the same place. In 28th of October 1962, hey, I see, the Master of the Universe made the blessing. The Master of the Universe made it in it. It is incredible. Twice in the same very long term, in a slightly different way, we see the Master of the Universe made it. The Master of the Universe made it. The blessing. Hey, I see. The Master of the Universe made the blessing. The Master of the Universe made it. In it, in 1962, the same year the Cuban crisis started. The Matrix just informed us that it was the Master of the Universe's blessing that saved us from a nuclear world war. The new term in this matrix is hinting to us that we in turn should bless the Master of the Universe. With a name we shall think. In Hebrew, the two words Baruch Hashem mean bless the Master of the Universe. It also has the meaning of with the Master of the Universe's help. It is also an expression of recognition for the source of our good fortune, appreciation, and thanks. The Matrix is asking us, using the term Shem, we should bless Baruch Hashem, bless the Master of the Universe. Thank you, Master of the Universe. And the last peace term in the Matrix states that the Master of the Universe returned the peace with slowness. Indeed, a peace accord was not reached overnight. However, successful steps were taken to move toward peace and move away from the Cold War. In 1962, the US is reported to have been prepared for a very dangerous war, but chose a path that was easier to bring peace. 50 years later, in 2012, the US is faced with a similar situation where she is prepared for war, but is trying different paths, such as another type of embargo that may bring us peace. In the next video, both years will be compared for their significance in the Torah codes.